Good morning, audience. I hope you enjoyed the last chapter and that it was enlightening. The last chapter of the bicycle saga. The 15 one, and now it will be the 16 one, and I am certain that this will actually be the last one. So stay with us. Of course, the Israeli neighbors here are doing everything they can in order to take control over the robot using magical ways. But the robot will speak, and the Israelis will bark as the dogs that they are, and עולם כמנהגו נוהג, כמו שנאמר, as they say. So, I need to have another, short, hopefully short historical introduction for the people that are not aware of the situation. But before it, with that, we'll just, let's do, a recap of just where we stand. What's the problem? So, we are now, at the beginning of the 80s, on the, end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. And, the Black Knight phenomenon is really cruel one, as you understand. And our protagonist wants to eliminate this institution. Now, I will say again, the problem is the institution, not really the specific people. Even though, of course, the specific people were, they were cool. And, they had the cool footmark on history, I would say. And another issue is that actually the females were afraid of them. And they had some kind of psychological dependency on them that I must admit I do not entirely understand, but I do understand that it's some way related to the bicycle mechanism, but it's also something cultural and something religious, and also it's something that was amplified by the brainwash of the Israelis. Also, it should be said that our protagonist, as far as I know, never even seen any of these Black Knights. Never even met them. And it's not like that he can confront any of them. It's not that kind of a movie. You need to understand it. It's not like an action movie that, he can just, confront them and, kill them. He has no special powers at all. And he doesn't even know them. And he has no, and these were probably, people of, do not hang out in his place. I know where he hung up. It's not like that. And also, there's a problem with the females that, they should have been released, but, they were married to also like pedophiles and, homosexual scumbags. So they were part of the Israeli intelligence, de facto. And again, it should be reminded that the bicycle mechanism was used, among other things, to terrorize them. Not necessarily by their husbands, but by everyone that drank their tea, the drug that comes from there. You hear the Israelis, the main weapon of the Israelis is now and always has been noise, bodily sounds, or just shouting, breaking stuff, noise, because the robots are afraid of noise. The robot has demonstrated to you how, from his pee. In his pee, or in his spit, you can find amazing amount of robots that can create life forms that withstand fire pit. But they are not impressed. They still think that if they will shout loud enough, the robot will be afraid and will soon be crawled under the command and will be their whore, because that's what they always wanted. This is the place that I live in. It's a trash can. It's just a trash can. Not just this hostel, this entire state, and maybe the entire globe, a trash can full of trash. Anyway, let's continue and not let these scumbags ruin this last episode. After that, why not we should start new series, as you understand. This series, as long as it is, it became that long, 16 episodes of each approximately an hour, some less, some more, but but there is so much more to say, on many adjacent subjects, and also about my own life, which is, as I said many times, I am not the protagonist of this series. I mean, some people, I know that some people, I mean, were almost certain that that's that's the situation, but it's not. I am not the guy. I am another guy. I was born in 1984. And I have my own history, my own life, my own family, my own problems with the Israeli intelligence, and of course torture and persecution. Because if there is one thing that is common to all messengers to Israel, no matter of what type, I mean, that they are tortured by the state. So maybe, I mean, so there are many other things to be said. I mean, you know, regarding my life. Many of them are actually things that I've never said until now. Some things that, I mean, were touched up. I mean, some subjects, I mean, some were actually, I mean, mentioned in one of the many videos that you can watch in this channel, but not like as a monograph. So this will be the next series probably, unless, I mean, there is like kind of change, but the series regarding my origin story, as I say. So there is a problem. I mean, let's get back to the end of the 70s, start of the 80s. There is a problem. I mean, how can you release these females? I mean, both from like their like physical bonds to the Israelis, and also the mental bonds, the mental like, I mean, dependence. And they were dangerous creatures. They were part of the Israeli intelligence, and they had their own like powers that, I mean, you cannot just do it without international support. So our protagonist understood that his only way of action. Now I should say that, like me, he tried to contact, like, I mean, the KGB, the CIA, the MI6, like, I mean, to tell them, I mean, to make them aware of the situation, but with no success. Because, I mean, even with, I mean, the age of the internet, presumably with all sorts of social networks, I mean, even you see that, I mean, I try to do it for many years, and I mean, they don't care. They just don't care. They don't care. So think about this guy. I mean, more than 40 years ago, with limited, like, and he wasn't part of an intelligence like in organization like me. I mean, yeah, he served in the IDF like pretty much everyone that, I mean, at the time. But I mean, it's nothing special about it. He wasn't related to any intelligence organization, and they tortured him. He was the chief Lord Commander of the fleet, and this is quite a big deal. But of course, like me, it took them a lot of time to actually understand it, because I mean, it requires some kind of like a prophecy. It's not that someone is telling you this. I mean, you need to understand it by your own self, just like me. I'm not saying that his journey was the same as mine. I mean, it's a different person, a different, I mean, problems. I mean, you know, different difficulties, and I mean, so I'm not aware of the particulars of his life. Like I only aware of, like, I mean, of his actions and his problems, but I'm not aware of, like, I mean, exactly what he was doing. Like, I mean, you know, and because I don't even know his name. I do know that, like me, he also painted, and I from the very beginning, like from of my painting, like I said, career 18 or 20 months ago, I understood that the symbolic language that that were later, I mean, was very important for the interaction of the robots. But as I said, most of this time, I mean, I thought about it like an interaction with spaceships. But I understood that it also that this symbolic language is, and the paintings that I do, this is something that I understood very early. I understood that it's in a way a method. I mean, like, or a tool, an instrument to connect me to previous messengers in Israel, and specifically to this guy, to this predecessor, because I understood that my predecessors, and most, I mean, specifically this guy, but also other before him, they knew about this language, and they used it in their paintings. The name, maybe it's all lost. Maybe none of it survived. I don't know. But I understood that if I use this kind of language in my paintings, it's in a way it's like an action that says, yeah, I'm like in this lineage. I mean, at the time I thought about something that, I mean, probably it's not true at all. I mean, not every thought that I have, like, I mean, it turns out to be true, but maybe it will still be, I mean, in the future we will discover it's actually somewhat true, but I mean, it's not an important issue. But I saw that perhaps some of these paintings still exist in the hands of people like around the world, and maybe they will understand that, like that. I mean, that because I use the symbolic language, not especially the same like subject matter, but the symbolic language that he used, or they used, because it's more than one, but specifically the resource that he used, it will be some kind of like, I mean, like authentication method, like I mean, some way to say, yeah, I mean, I relate to this person, and it might, I mean, make my messages, like, I mean, give my messages more credence. Because I remind you, at the time I didn't know that I have any way to prove, like, I mean, easy way to prove that I'm not Homo sapiens. And only later, I mean, during this January, I mean, starting this January, I started to seriously conduct, I mean, I was in house arrest, and I still am under house arrest, so I started to conduct the microscopic examination, and it was very clear to me that it's actually very easy to prove that I'm not Homo sapiens. And that you can do amazing stuff with these robots, and I mean, you don't need no special equipment at all. But I didn't know that at the time. I had no idea that, I mean, it's so easy actually to prove it, because I had no, I mean, background in biological science. So I saw that, I mean, that I need that the people will, I mean, require, I mean, some kind of like, I mean, authentication, like, I mean, from like, I mean, to say, I mean, why should, or authorization, like, why should we believe you? Like, I mean, what's your sign? Like, I mean, as they say in the Bible, and give us a sign, like, I mean, what's the sign? So I sort of, this language is kind of like a sign that will, I mean, that will give credence to my messages. Because, I mean, I was always, I mean, I understood very well that, I mean, since, 4 years ago, that, I mean, I'm subject to terror of the intelligence organization, and that, I mean, they paint me in very bad ways, and that, I mean, they create videos, like fake videos, like with me presumably doing all stuff like sexual stuff. And so I understood that, I mean, if I want the help of people outside of Israel, and that I have to get it, I need some kind of like, I mean, a sign. I mean, and again, I didn't know that it's so easy to actually conduct microscopic, I mean, research. So I sort of had this kind of like, I mean, of my inquiry into the symbolic language as a way to connect me to my predecessors in Israel, and specifically to this guy, because I understood that he also, I mean, painted. But I mean, all of this, actually, it was a major thought, like, of myself, like, when I started this all the issues of, I mean, all, I mean, this kind of like, I mean, painting career, I would say. But over time, it's kind of like, I mean, forgotten, because I found not even a shred of the evidence that any painting of this man actually exists. I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I mean, I had no, like, I mean, confirmation of any part of this kind of like line of thought. But even like in a personal level, it's a way to connect myself, like, I mean, to my predecessors. Even though maybe they didn't like add exactly the same knowledge that I have, or I mean, and as I said, I mean, this is kind of, you need to think about it not like as a programming language, but more like as a natural language that evolves over time. And I mean, different contexts, you have different contexts, I mean, the symbols change. So, I mean, probably the predecessor didn't use exactly the same symbols that I use, and didn't have the same understanding, but still, it should be obvious that it's the same language, or dialects of the same language. So this guy, the predecessor, understood that what he must do was to manipulate reality using his only special power, which is amazing power, but nevertheless something that you need to think about very. It takes a lot of time to actually understand how to use it. I'm still learning, and also, I mean, you should think a lot before you're doing anything. Like, I mean, because it's potentially, I mean, the implication could be, I mean, far beyond what you can imagine, and this actually what happened. I mean. And this action, I mean, while, I mean, I think that I justify his actions completely. And if I were him, I would have done the same. And I am not him, okay? But if I were him, I would have done the same. But yes, I mean, these actions, they had like positive effects, but also very negative effects, that I myself suffer from these effects. In a way, I am a victim of this story. Even though, of course, I justify like his action completely. Of course, the villain is the state of Israel. But just saying, my own life is, my own torture is to a very large extent a product of course, Israeli cruelty, but also of the actual changing of the mechanism that my predecessor has done. This is the situation. And another thing should be said that while my predecessor understood that he knew about the radiation attacks, it's not something that he started. It was actually something that one of his predecessors started. This is something that it takes place on Earth a long time now, and it's only getting worse. And he knew about it, but he didn't really want to change it because it was already in effect. And if people don't care, it's not like more radiation will make them care. So he needed to find a way to actually speak in a way that people abroad will actually hear. That will actually, notice, his messages, and more than that, they should give it weight, because maybe in the intelligence organization, it's not just the issue is not only with they say isuf, I don't know what's the translation of isuf, gathering of information, but there is also the analysis and the proliferation of the information inside the organization and inside parallel organization. So even if they have the knowledge, they still doesn't mean that they care, and doesn't mean that it's analyzed. It doesn't mean that and even if it's analyzed and it's in some kind of the message is brought to the attention of higher ups, doesn't mean that they will do anything with it, because knowledge in our world is related very strongly to power. This is true, and especially inside intelligence organizations. Many times, intelligence organizations, one of the the known frustration of intelligence organization is that many times they work very hard, to acquire some kind of information, or to build a theory regarding reality, and they use a lot of resources, to gather information, to send electronic means and spies and whatever, so this theory will have a strong background in evidence. And then they actually do it, and then they are very happy that they succeeded in this. Sometimes after years of effort, and now they go to the politicians that are above them. This is there is always some kind of a politician. In Israel, it's the prime minister, but it's not necessarily the president. But in Israel, the prime minister is in charge of the Shabak and the Mossad. And regarding Amman, it's a little bit complicated, but because he kind of reports directly to the prime minister, but also is under the command of the chief of staff. But anyway, there are always politicians that you should bring them the knowledge, and sometimes so very happily after all the efforts and that they've done the organization, so they go to the politicians and they present the theory and the evidence, and the politicians just say, this is not reality. We do not accept this reality because it doesn't fit their worldview or their politics or their personal interests or the stand of the party, if it's like party system like in Israel or Britain. And it just they said this knowledge is not we do not accept this knowledge. And it happens many times because knowledge and power are interlinked in this world. And the power, of course, ultimately lies in the hand of the politicians. It's not exactly like that, because the intelligence organization, one of the problems of the world is that the intelligence organization have power over politicians. This was known for more than 100 years, and this is actually one of the reasons why, I mean, to begin with so many intelligence organization in the world so that it's a good idea to populate themselves with homosexuals and pedophiles. It was partly like a way to mitigate the power of the growing power of the intelligence organization. This was a way to, they thought that this would mitigate like the growing issue of too much power in the hands of the intelligence organization of the world. So they thought it's like that this will mitigate. I mean, because these people, I mean, they I mean, all of them, like, I mean, there is like a limit to how much, I mean, they can defame their own like supervising politicians, which was a main concern. It was a main concern not only in Soviet Russia by Lavrenti Beria, but also famously in the United States by J. Edgar Hoover, and in many other places. So this was a major concern, like in the first half of this century. So they thought, I mean, maybe we can and look at the Shabak and the Mossad. What they do is, I mean, specifically the Mossad, I mean, defamation is the huge part of what they do, because they're creeps and scumbags and the scum of the earth. But this was known since long ago. So one of the reasons of the whole arrangement with the pedophiles and homosexuals was, I mean, kind of like an effort to try to limit their power by the fact that practically all of them were people that, I mean, like had their own like share of like, I mean, very, I mean, disturbing and shameful, like, I mean, background. And this is only part of the picture. It's, I mean, there were justification to. I understood. I mean, I understand the issue that, I mean, at least to a large extent, I mean, it's not just like, I mean, like in that somehow, I mean, you see this, I mean, phenomenon of so many homosexuals and pedophiles in the intelligence organization, not only in Israel but in other places. It had some kind of like, it had justification, like historical justification. My position on the matter is that, I mean, ultimately it proved like to be completely disastrous, and I mean, and all the justification were not strong enough at all, because the negative side is, I mean, far outweighs, I mean, any kind of like presumably positive effect. But it's not the issue of this the video. It's not the subject of this video. Anyway, knowledge and power are interlinked. So many times, I mean, if an intelligence organization, I mean, is working very hard to gain knowledge, I mean, if the knowledge does not fit the, I mean, the interest or the worldview or the party of the politician that is above them, I mean, it just does not accept this knowledge. I mean, it just, I mean, no, I mean, it says, this is not true. It cannot be true. I do not accept it is true. And it happens a lot. And it's not only like in dictatorships or, I mean, or presumably like, I mean, authoritarian regimes. This happens in democracies just as well. Perhaps even more so in democracies. Because of many reasons, but it's not I mean, this is not the subject of this video. So it's not enough. Like, I mean, you need both knowledge, but you also need proof, but you also need power in order, I mean, so someone will actually, I mean, care about these issues. And our protagonist, they didn't have any power at all. So this was, a question. I mean, what can you do? And again, radiation was proved to be not enough, because actually it was already an existing phenomenon, and it's only and it's increased. But the people, like, I mean, specifically in the United States and in Russia, they just thought of it as either, like, I mean, like a natural phenomenon, like the Israelis thought, or presumably something like, I mean, that should be looked like as an internal problem of the intelligence organization, but not something that, I mean, belongs, I mean, of very high priority. And I mean, it's kind of like internal, like a health issue that, I mean, it couldn't be denied that it's related to the consumption of the drug. But I mean, yes, I mean, okay, yes, I mean, these people, I mean, they consume drugs, I mean, they should deal with it, I mean. And you should understand, I mean, intelligence organizations are not like, I mean, the babysitters of their people. Even though in many times, and especially in Israel, the people require a babysitter. But I mean, they are not the babysitters of the people. I mean, most of the people that are related to such organizations, they just live them presumably their own life, and they're not even they don't even show like in an office like a 9-to-5 work. I mean, some do, but many mostly don't, and certainly in Israel do not. Like, they live their own life, and they are only kind of like in a relationship with the intelligence organization. And certainly, I mean, they are not a babysitter, so they shouldn't solve presumably every else issue that they have. I mean, yeah, they had many health issues. I mean, it wasn't all health issues. I mean, in Israel, there are so many like health issues with regards to evolution exploitation. I mean, and it was certainly not the first one. Not since then, and not and up to now, including up to this day. I mean, so much diseases, so much problems. I mean, with infertility and sexual diseases and whatever. I mean, and they keep doing the same, like, I mean, wicked way, because that's the way they are. But just to say, I mean, health issues inside intelligence organization was not invented by the radiation, like, I mean, effect. So, what do you do? How do you make people care? So, what actually he has done, this person, was three changes in the bicycle mechanism. One I've already actually told you about, which is kind of like, I mean, kind of like a rabbinical, I mean, chidush ba'alacha, like, I mean, like a new kind of like law, or I mean, if you're a Christian, you can think of it like, I mean, kind of like a Protestant revolution, I mean, regarding divorce. But before we get into it, I need to give you a little bit of like, I mean, another historical introduction, because it's important. So, about like 8 years ago, I guess, or 7 years ago, there was a quite unusual interview in the Israeli night news report, news TV show. I mean, see, it's since a long time ago that I do not watch TV, certainly not broadcasted TV. Just, I mean, you know, sometimes I see, like, I mean, if there is like an interesting show, I see the show, but not like, I mean, broadcasted TV, and certainly not Israeli, because it's all junk. But I accidentally I've seen this kind of like this specific, like, I mean, news show, because it was not in my, I mean, at the time I was married, and I mean, I was with my wife at in Haifa, like in that house, like in the apartment of her mother. So it was, I mean, so we were there, and it was just, oh, you know, the TV was open, you know, so I mean, I couldn't, like, I mean, but noticed, I mean, what's going on the TV, and it was quite unusual. It was quite an unusual interview. It was an interview with Vanunu, Mordechai Vanunu. Do you remember the name? It was one of the only interviews that he had like, certainly, I mean, the most, I mean, I think certainly the most, like, I mean, the longest one. And like with the person himself, like, I mean, not like in a newspaper, like, I mean, TV show. And it was, I mean, shortly after his release from a very long jail, like, I mean, the time in jail, maybe 30 years or so. So they interviewed him. Do you remember the man? So during the 19... You should know that the Israeli stand regarding their atomic capabilities are very unique among the nations. They have a very unique position, like a public position, which is called amimut, ambiguity in English, which is something that no other state, hold this position. It was always their position, which means that they do not say anything about, like, I mean, whether they do have a nuclear weapon or they don't have nuclear weapon, and they refuse to even to say anything. Like, their position is that they do not speak about it, like, with anyone, and it's peculiar because it's something that, I mean, in this world, I mean, since the 50s, it was, I mean, it was customary, even among, like, the Russians and the Americans that were, as you know, severe enemies, but still, I mean, it was something that, I mean, people, it was customary to speak about these issues. And I mean, this kind of, like, I mean, like, speeches actually led to a very important ban on atomic experiments. I don't remember it was like the late 50s or the 60s or the 60s, but it didn't happen much after the 60s, and it was very important because the actual, I mean, the atomic, I mean, experiments that you've seen in the first Indiana Jones movie, they were actually very common during the 1950s, and they led remarkable environmental remark on Earth. And if it would have been continued, I mean, would have been disastrous. So it was very important to stop it, and so they spoke about it. I mean, even though they were still enemies, they still spoke about these issues, and that led to a universal ban on these experiments. And there is, of course, like, I mean, you know, the SAB, like the international, I mean, committee, like, I mean, that should govern like atomic proliferation, atomic weapon proliferation, but they never had, like, I mean, they were never invited to set foot in Israel, and it was always, like, I mean, completely, like, shrouded in some kind of, I mean, secrecy that, I mean, no one speaks about it. But at some point during the 60s, I think, there was kind of like a rumor that spread in Israel that was correct. I don't know who spread it, but it was very widespread that yes, the Israelis they have nuclear program, and they develop nuclear weapons, and they do it with the help of the French, because they had to have some kind, I mean, they don't have, you know, they had to have like another nuclear state that will support this kind of venture, because, I mean, they were such a small state, still they are, and certainly then, and I mean, and nuclear power was, nuclear weapons were, even today they are very uncommon, but they are very uncommon even now, and also then, I mean, so, I mean, they had to have like kind of, I mean, someone that will support this venture, and this someone were the French. And they have to build the atomic nuclear reactor, like, I mean, in Dimona. And there is also, like, I mean, publicly acknowledged, like, I mean, research center in Dimona, which is presumably centered like on research of atomic related issues. But, I mean, of course, as I said, Israelis will always maintain that, I mean, they do not speak at all. I mean, yes, I mean, they say that yes, we have this research facility which is used for civilian purposes, whatever they are, but we do not say anything about like atomic weapons. The only thing that historically they say is kind of a very ambiguous statement, which is that Israel will not be the first to introduce atomic weapons to the Middle East, but it will also not be the second. It's kind of like a riddle that, I mean, you need to decrypt. I still have not decrypted this riddle, but, I mean, there's something that they say a lot, that Israel will not be the first to introduce atomic weapons to the Middle East, but they will also not be the second. If you have if anyone of the listeners like can decrypt the riddle, I mean, send us your, I mean, your solution, and, I mean, among all the people that will actually send the correct solution, we will make, like, I mean, kind of like, I mean, a lottery, and one will be chosen, and we will get like a prize from like the editorial of this channel. Probably not a very expensive one, because we don't have any money. So that's what they say. I don't know what it means. And what does the word introduce meaning? What does it mean? But, I mean, it was famous, like, I mean, for some reason, since the 60s, that they developed, I mean, that they have this kind of like a program that is supported heavily by the French. And presumably at some point, I mean, they also have the atomic bomb, but no one can really say when. But it was kind of like a common knowledge that they do. I don't know how this common knowledge came to be a common knowledge. It's true, actually. It was true, but I don't know, I mean, what kind of like mechanism actually proliferated this knowledge, because the formal position was always that ambiguity, that they do not say anything, not yes or no or whatever, nothing. So it was around the year in 1984, I think, but maybe I do not recall correctly. Maybe 1985, or 4, or 5, or 6. Between 1984 to 1986, probably. I mean, it's easy to check it, but, I mean, why should I? I mean, you can check it yourself. I think 1984, there was like a whistleblower or a traitor, whatever you want to call it. His name was Mordechai Varnunu. He worked in the Dimona nuclear program, and he brought a lot of material, including diagrams and I think also photographs, and he took it abroad and he met with a newspaper, representatives. I don't remember what newspaper, maybe LA Times, something like that. Perhaps it doesn't really matter. And he gave them all this material, and they made like a huge like the scoop of a lifetime of that they have a whistleblower from inside the nuclear program of the Israelis, with diagrams and photographs, and this article actually was very influential, and it was kind of like met with a lot of surprise by many people, because according to the material that he gave them, Israel, if I'm not mistaken, Israel, at least at the time, had 400 nuclear warheads, 400, which is much more than people thought for a long time that Israelis, they have nuclear weapons. It was kind of known things. As I said, for some reason, people actually kind of known about it. I don't know how. But almost anyone inside of Israel and also abroad did not think that they have 400. 400 is a very large number. Yes, the Americans and the Russians had at the time several thousands, but even they were already, reducing the supply at the time. And since then they actually, they reduced it even further. And other nations, and not many nations, had very few nations had nuclear weapons. And 400 was far more than anyone actually thought. So it's kind of it was met with amusement throughout the world. He was a technician, I think, in the Dimona Center. And he refused to go back to Israel. I don't know what was his plans. And he famously was caught in Rome by a spy, an agent. I think she was blonde. I think she was named Susie or something. Anyway, a Mossad agent that, tempted him or seduced him or whatever. And, then he was captured. And actually, the circumstances of this capture are actually one of the things that are discussed in this interview that was held 30 years after that, 31 or 32 years after that. That's the interview that I refer to. So he speaks about, his capture, one of the things that he speaks about. So, and this Susie with other, Mossad people, they just, kidnapped him, from Rome and brought him to trial to Israel. And he received very harsh punishment of something like 30 years, in I think all of it or most of it was in isolation. And he was released after a long time. And then he gave this interview where he said that, he's kind of that he cannot leave Israel. He's still under the surveillance of the Shabak, and probably it will be like that forever. And he lives like a mansion, like a house in Jaffa, if I'm not, Jaffa, which is adjacent to Tel Aviv, and that is financed by, and then sometimes I think that he was converted to Christianity, and there are Christian people that see him as abroad, that see him as a martyr for peace, it's because of his actions, and they support him, they give him money so he can live. But he cannot leave Israel, and his movements are very limited. And he mostly acts in kind of sort of a house arrest in this mansion in Jaffa, and always under surveillance of the Shabak. And he gave a little bit of other details, in this very unusual interview. And I've seen this interview. And when the interview was done, I thought about what I've seen, and very quickly I've reached a conclusion. So we ask, what conclusion did you arrive at? What was your conclusion? So my conclusion was that this man is an actor, like the many actors that I've seen during my life. All my life, I'm surrounded by actors, including now. In this whole hostel, presumably the other homeless people and arrested people, they are all, of course, actors of the Shabak. So I mean, after so long, I mean, you are used to living in like, I mean, for life in a movie, as they say, חי בסרט. So אני חי בסרט. I'm living in a movie. I'm always surrounded by actors. This man is an actor. He never sat in jail because it never existed. There was never such a person. There was never such a person. Everything that they just said, everything that I've said since I started to discuss the atomic, discuss Vanunu in this video, it's all a lie. It's all a lie. It was all manufactured by the Mossad. This is a theater show. This man never existed. He never sat in jail because he never existed. He's a fake person, like these people here. Like one of many fake people that exist in Israel. I mean, and from time to time, I mean, the actors are professional actors of the Mossad or the Shabak are just, they are just acting, and like, to portray the character, the fictional character. During this time, like the mid-80s, the number of warheads that actually the Israeli possessed is zero. Zero. Even though it's true that in the past they had several. In the past of Israel, yes, they had nuclear weapons. Yes, with the help of the French. Yes, this is correct. But during the mid-80s, the number of warheads that they had is zero. Not 400, zero. This is all a theater show. It's just a theater show. This man never existed. Susie never existed. This is all just a theater. Yes. Yes, that's the way it is. It was a show. Because people believed that they had nuclear weapons and they wanted them to believe it that way. So they made a show, like that people will think that they have 400 warheads, but in effect they had zero. Yeah, this is like a side note. So let's get back to our story. This is like a side note. Let's get back to our story. So our protagonist thought very well, a lot about what can he do to actually change the situation. And he understood that all the actions that he can do should be, that they should be in effect immediately. Because he understood that he had very limited window in order to actually have a positive effect. Because if it will be like only several measures, but not all the measures that are required in order to solve the issue will be taking place, there will be a strong retaliation from the Shabak and the people of Israel. Retaliation presumably not only on him, but also perhaps like on the females. And he didn't want him to kill the females or to harm them more than they already did. So he thought, it took him some time to understand what should be done. And he came to the conclusion that three things should be done. And they should be done almost together, like immediately. So he waited. He waited until there will be like another radiations, because it was periodical and it's still periodical. So we waited for a radiation episode because he understood that this is the correct time to actually do whatever he did. This was the early 80s. So we've done the following. First, he enacted a new law, which from now on, the religion of the Venusians will be Protestant, which means that they can divorce. And specifically, he created two new rules, which can seem like incredibly intuitive, but they were important, if only for symbolic reasons. The first rule is that Venusian male and female cannot bond or marry in our terminology, but they cannot bond without their knowledge. That it's impossible. That there is no such a thing as and this was important because what he thought that perhaps, sometimes these Black Knights, are not even aware of what they are doing. This wasn't actually the case with these specific Black Knights, but it sometimes happened in the past of, there are something that, similar to this already happened, like the past of Israel. So it was one of his concerns that, that it should not be happening without the knowledge of the involved, people involved. Like in Venus, it couldn't have been happened because, how is it even possible? There is that kind of, as I said, there is kind of like a mating ritual that, as I said, to an outsider, part of it can look somehow how, maybe, I would say forced sexual relation, but it's not really true because it's impossible because, the males are the weaker side. So it's kind of like a game, like more like a mating ritual, which signifies that the male actually, that he is willing, to make an effort, to catch the female, because this is kind of like presumably, like a lifelong relation that, then she needs to serve as his knight to protect his life, and of course, a family with him. So it's not like like a one night stand. So usually, the female, shows interest on the male. This is similar to how things are very frequently happen in Earth. That presumably the males are the ones the active part in the mate, in the courting rituals, but very frequently, and probably today more than ever, actually, it happens only after the female actually already that they've shown interest in the man. This is actually very similar to how things happen in Earth. But then, it needs to show some kind of that is not only that they tempted in the moment, because it needs to show that he's serious. So how can he do it? Get a job in a bank, or what, or buy fancy suit. They don't have these things in Venus. So this is a way to show that his interest, that he needs to chase her, and it's not easy because she's actually stronger than him. Anyway, all of this mechanism does not allow, bonding without the two sides that, of course, that they understand whatever they do. But in Israel, our protagonists saw that, there might be circumstances that, they don't even understand what they are doing. So this is actually was not true to almost all the things that happened between the Black Knights and the Dark Knights and their victims. The problem is that they just they of course they lied to them, and they captured the very young ones and they took them to another planet, and then they haven't seen them. They abandoned them, they left them agunot forever as servants to other people. And so so it wasn't exactly the issue with, but it was kind of another issue that was related. That not specifically to this group, but it was kind of a thing that could have happened, using all the perversion of the Israelis, that to actually to bond male and female with at least one of the sides not even knowing what they are doing. Because if you understand it, when you completely detach the cultural context and the mating ritual and all this, the cultural aspect, you detach it completely, and you take them as research subject or farm animal, and you use their bodily fluids with your own agents, which is completely pervert and cruel and sinful in an unmanageable way. But one of the things that actually can theoretically happen is that to create such bonding even without the knowledge of the people involved. So there was a new rule that this cannot happen. That they must, both sides should know what they're doing. The other law that was the second one was that if they do not have sex in within the range of 2 months, any 2 months, they are divorced which was a new thing, unless they agree, beforehand, that this will not apply by their own, by the acceptance of both sides. Like one side cannot force force the other side, to agree that that this law will not be in effect. But this is important because sometimes, maybe I don't know, someone needs to. It's not really relevant for Venus. In Venus, it's not relevant at all. But it can be relevant in Earth, and this is the Earth situation. The problem was arise because all of these people were in Earth. Presumably, there can be situation when sometimes the husband can be or the wife shouldn't be whoever. Maybe the wife she's like a spy in that she works in a spy for the Israeli intelligence and she has a mission in the United States to be a spy in Lockheed Martin for or in Boeing or in NASA for 4 months or 5 months. This kind of thing certainly happened. It's not theoretical. So yes, during these 5 months when she works as a spy in NASA or whatever or Boeing, she can't have sex with him, but doesn't mean that they want to divorce. So if they accept it beforehand, it's not applied, but they cannot force it on each other. You hear the sound, whenever I speak about something that they don't like, they use the cleaning, usually in the cleaning machine, in Israel, it's it cleans your streets one time, every 6 months. But in this street, it's every other day at least. It's an hour of cleaning of the machine because they know that the robots do not like noise, so they make a lot of noise, so the robot will be afraid and they will shut their mouths. This is where I live. This is Israel. So essentially, this made all of them divorced because none of them had sex with their husband or with any other person. And I cannot say to what extent this actually contributed to their release, because in effect until today many of them still they have fear of these people. Even though they died long ago. So it's not that this magically release them from the dark nights. To some extent, even until this day, they fear them and depend on them in some kind of psychological way. Until this day, many years after they already died. Because as I've said many times in this series, we do not deal with mechanical with firmware update that you're gonna just press a button and everything will be solved. These are cultural problems and societal problems. The bicycle mechanism is only part of the solution. It's just part of the solution. But it was an important part, and I cannot say how much it contributed, but it was important to some extent to release them from the influence of these dark nights. And I don't know to what extent, because again, they were not only that it didn't completely release them from the dark night at the time, it's even until this day it's not the actual thing. Up until now, some of them still have kind of dependency and fear of these people, even though they died. All of them died long ago, because it's this kind of thing is complicated. Psychology is complicated. It's not just robotics, but it's one measure. Now, the second measure was incredibly important and incredibly relevant to my own life. And this was reversing the bicycle. And this had tremendous implications. And people didn't understand it immediately. It took time for people to actually understand it, but it was incredibly important because no matter if they are divorced or not, they are still subject to the terror of the bicycle, because any person, not only a titan, even Homo sapiens that can eat their tea, their drug, can manipulate manipulate their mind by, I mean, in the many ways that the bicycle actually allow you to do it. Like, I mean, like smell, like it's like voodoo. Like you smell something and then she smells it, or you see something that scares the air, and because they were, I mean, the Israelis knew very well, I mean, they like the nature like of these females, because I mean they were subjected to this terror, and they used their weaknesses against them. I mean, this is one of the main things that the Shabak is doing, to find weaknesses and to use it against you. I mean, they always do it against me, like all my life, even though we think that it doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, they have like a notion that, I mean, I'm very afraid of fire for some reason. I don't know why, even though I'm demonstrably not true, but so all of them are always like, I mean, they try to light fire near me so I'll be afraid. I mean, it's unbelievably irrational, and I mean, it's against like evidence that you can see in your own eyes that I'm not afraid of fire. But anyway, I mean, they still do it to me. Like, I mean, so they had knowledge of their weaknesses, or their supposed weaknesses, and they used it against them. Also, using just, I mean, just simple terror, what I call the Soviet method, but also using the bicycle mechanism, which allows like people to actually, I mean, like create also like psychological, I mean, phenomenon on a person, even, I mean, without actually touching the person, or just, I mean, by like, I mean, by I mean, smelling something, or hearing something, like I mean, something, and because the mechanism allows you to transmit the auditory senses and also electricity, so you can actually like electrocute yourself, like in very, very mildly, like in a way that will not hurt you, but then, I mean, she will feel it as well, and this is, even if it's not dangerous, it's terrifying. And all of these things could have like be conducted and were conducted by, I mean, not by the Dark Knight specifically, but just by anyone that drank the tea, that, I mean, which means many people. So he decided to reverse the mechanism, and this had tremendous implications. But it was not understood immediately. But it was important because this actually stopped the ability of the Israelis to terrorize those females using the mechanism. Even though, I should say again, they didn't understand it immediately. Because, I mean, first of all, they don't understand anything immediately. As I said, they still, they used, all sorts of like things that, demonstrably don't work on me, like for many years, like almost every day. So, it's not, they're not very good in the Israeli intelligence in, like, gathering new evidence, like, that changed, like, the way that they torture people. Because the way that they torture their slave is part of the religion. It cannot be changed very easily. So it's not like, you might think that, if you were not aware of how things work, you can think that, immediately everyone understood it. Like the mechanism was reversed, and now, I don't know, like magically, they changed the way that they act. But it wasn't like that, because it's just not the way. First of all, the mechanism is always, it's kind of like, it shows itself in the vicinity of other ways of terrorism. In like all sorts of hypnotic. This is all under the category of the Soviet method. I spoke about it a lot in this channel. Like all sorts of bogus hypnotic theories and report creating theories, and kind of like all sorts of theories of that very old-fashioned and anachronistic and cruel and totalitarian theories regarding like how can you control people. Using presumably hypnosis and psychological ways. And I put all of these under the umbrella term that I call the Soviet method. And I spoke about it a lot in the past, and this is like major part of the religion of the Shabak, and also the Mossad, but mostly the Shabak. It's part of their, it's part of the religion. Slavery and these methods. Even if they don't see any good results, they keep like doing the same things. It's like Orthodox religion. That you have to like do all sorts of like say things and do things even, and you don't really expect results. If there are like evident results, fine. But if there aren't, it doesn't really matter. They just keep doing the same rituals again and again. So it took for them time to understand that actually the mechanism was reversed. But it was important to do it swiftly as part of the other changes to ensure that there will not be a great retaliation against those females. But this, created, just, not to create too much suspense, but maybe many of you already understand the situation because I've spoken about it quite a bit even in this series. There was another generation of the females that of the female titans like in Israel, and they were actually integral part of they were and still are. I mean, many of them died very recently. This is kind of like a very recent development, but up until like very recent events, they were an integral part of the Shabak and also the Mossad, but certainly the Shabak, and they worked as operators and like I mean as analysts and as like I mean and the propaganda makers, and they actually operated the men, and the men actually today in our days they are, I mean it's like I mean they are microbes. I mean the level of the males like in the Shabak or also the Mossad, but certainly the Shabak, you would not believe like how low it is, and it wasn't always like that. They were always cruel. They were always cruel. And probably the coolest of them all were, I mean, they were living during the 1950s and the 60s, even before the time that I refer now. Like the coolest of all were probably living during the 1950s and 60s. But I mean, throughout the years, because also of reason, the quality of the people immensely, I mean, decreased. They are still pedophiles and homosexuals, and they are still cool, but they are unbelievably stupid and uneducated. And the typical females are, like the Titan females are way more educated and smarter than them, even though, I mean, they're not that smart. Like the they are called metalheads by other organizations, and this is actually, I like this term, because that's what they are, metalheads. I mean, in objective scale, they're pretty stupid and cool and childish, because they grew in Israel since they were very young babies, and they don't know of any other existence, and they grew in like inside like adapting families that were all part of the Israeli intelligence, and these people are, to begin with, they were the scum of the earth. So I mean, what do you think happens? I mean, when you take like people, whatever, I mean, they were nowhere. It doesn't matter where they were born, or I mean, what's their biology or mechanics or whatever. You take a sentient creature, and since he's a baby, I mean, he grows like in a family of lizards. So and like in a country of a state that is full of lizards, and a family that is particularly, I mean, inhabited by cool lizards. So I mean, what do you think will happen after 20 years or 30 years? That I mean, these people will go to be like, I mean, Mother Teresa, or Marie Curie, or J.K. Rowling? I don't know. None of the above. They will be lizards, and they all grew to be lizards. But yes, I mean, compared to the usual taxidermy, I call that the males. The males are most of the actors, because most of the shows that the Shabak and the Mossad are doing require male actors and not females. Because I mean that's the way it is. I mean, maybe because, I mean, you know, traditional society or whatever. And it was actually in many theaters, it was actually like that. I mean, during Shakespearean time, you know, I mean, the Shakespearean, there were only male actors. I mean, they also played the side of the roles of the females, and it was like that in Japan in some area, in several like areas, like in Japanese theater, and I mean, so it's also like that in the Shabak and the Mossad. Like I mean, most of the roles are male. I mean, are male roles. That's the kind of TV shows and movies that they like to create. And most of the actors are taxidermies. Like they are Homo sapienses that have nothing inside their body besides, like I mean, the cochlear chip and the vocal cords that are still intact, because it's the most important and actually the only important organ in their body, according to the view of the operators. So what happened is actually that these two titans became prominent inside intelligence organizations, and they became cool. And also they did not accept the fact that they should live like without sex. They think that it's their right to have sex. But this is really, all of this is related to my own life story, and I should not get into it, because this is just a different story in a different generation. But all of this affected me tremendously, because what happened now is that they became very powerful inside these organizations, and they still produce the tea, and the tea is still consumed by the taxidermies. But now the taxidermies are completely dependent on the females, not only because they are the operators usually, and because they are the smarter people inside the organization, but also because they control the bicycle now. So they can actually terrorize these people. Now, it's not only used like as a means of terror. This is actually used many times as part of the operation when the cochlear chip cannot be used, because not always you can use the cochlear chip. Sometimes, in like dangerous situation, when people can suspect that this is kind of like an intelligence operation, you cannot use the cochlear chip. So this is kind of like, so they use like as an alternative to the cochlear chip, like as a way to transmit information between the female that is used as the operator and the male that are the actors, because the problem is how to transmit information from the operator to the actor, because the other way around is mostly it's much easier, because there are like a million ways like to bug a room. Using just the phone, the devices. It's so easy today. There's like it's so cheap. Like every intelligence organization in the world, can afford like to bug almost like every room. If they only want to, because it's so easy. So it's very easy to transmit information from the actor to the operator. But the other way this is the difficult way. Like, how do you transmit information from the operator to the actor, to the taxidermy? And they need constant information to be passed, because they have no brain at all. If they will not, if the operators, the Titan operators will not tell them exactly what to say, they will just sit like that, and maybe they will smoke, maybe they'll not just do anything at all. Just they will wait for further script. Without script, they don't even know what to say. Certainly not what to do. These are the people that around me like for many years now. Most certainly here in this hostel, but not only in this hostel. They are pedophiles and homosexual, Homo sapien taxidermies. That without specific script and commands, like in the cochlear chip, they don't know. They just sit like wait for further command. That's the level of that's the quality of human resources in the intelligence of our generation in Israel. Human taxidermies. So yes, so one of the ways to actually transmit the usual way is to using invisible cochlear chip, and this is very common, not only in Israel, but. And actually, I can smell this from like a mile away, because I'm so used to these people. Before they even open their mouths, I can say that they have the cochlear chip and that they are taxidermies, because you can just identify them by they have that kind of even without them saying anything, they have lifeless eyes, and they gaze into reality like it's the kind of and chaotic abyss of non-important and random events that should just they should just kind of sail in this kind of ocean of non-meaningful events, using a kind of a primitive boat that has no way to actually navigate, but just tririm, the old very ancient Greek sail boat that that was just wandering between island and an island without any ability to almost no ability to actually navigate the boat. So that's how they navigate their way in life. They have no, everything is random, and doesn't mean anything. And they usually they gaze like you, and it's lifeless, certainly emotionless kind of view. So they many times they walk like zombified creatures. So after you are used to that, you can identify these taxidermies very easily. But certainly, it can be done using technological ways, technological tools. So when they cannot use the cochlear chip, they have now the very important way to do it, ability to do it by transmitting auditory sound and even visuals between the operator and the taxidermies, assuming the taxidermy actually ate the tea, and all of them are eating the tea to some extent, because that's what it's always have been and still like that. That all of the taxidermies, the human taxidermies are consuming this drug. So, anyway, all of this relates to our generation and to my own life story and to cruel torture that I'm subjected to for a long time now. But this is another story. Let's get back to our story, the story that, culminated in the 80s. So he decided that, in order to prevent retaliation using the bicycle mechanism should be reversed. On Earth, specifically, not in Venus. Because this can also be, you can also, using the symbolic language, you can determine in what places, that it will be in Earth but not in Venus. And most importantly, what can you do with the dark nights? I don't know if most importantly, actually everything is important. But there is still the question of the dark night, so what can you do now? So as I said, he waited with all these measures. All of these were done, were in effect immediate together, and and he waited until there will be a radiation event, and he had done all these changes like immediately. When this radiation event started. Because like me, he understood that the gates are evil, but I can tell you that and you can see it in my art actually, it is something that is demonstrated in my art a lot throughout like all this time, that I'm ambivalent towards the gates. Like I don't know, should they be closed completely? I'm ambivalent towards it. I think that they should not be used. But they are ancient, and presumably they have like good intentions behind them. As I say, I do not believe in the prime directive. So I can see a theoretical possibility that is completely far-fetched from our circumstances, but like a theoretical possibility of like a potential a good and fruitful relationship between the planets. Like presumably that maybe not humans, but some kind of like people that are advanced that live on Earth will help the Venusians to get better technology and to live better life in their planet. This it's kind of like something that could potentially happen. It's so of course it cannot be done by humans, because you're all scumbags and little children yourself. You need babysitter yourself. You cannot babysit other people. But if potentially other races could live on the Earth, and other races actually lived on Earth. So maybe if another sentient species which is far better and moral than humans will actually live in Earth, it's possible that we will want these gates to actually be there. So maybe they will help the Venusian to advance. Because as I said, I do not believe in the Cherubs do not believe in the prime directive. And as I've said, they did it in Earth, like themselves. They already did it. Since long ago, they did it in Earth. So it's not out of the question that inhabitants of Earth, if they are not filthy humans, but other kind of sentient creatures, will actually help the Venusians. So it's a problem. What do you do? And also, it should be said that and should be reminded that you cannot solve all the problems of humans using all sorts of magic. And it doesn't matter what if you are a cherub or not, or a Lord Commander of the Fleet or not. The main issue was always to make people aware of the situation and understand the severity of the situation, and so the superpowers will actually, not only the superpowers but the powers of this world will intervene. So they will actually be the ones that control the situation and put the Israeli dogs in their place, because that's what they always have been, stupid and childish dogs. And you cannot dictate reality for humanity. And I said, I don't even know what was the nature of this person, the predecessor. Maybe he was Homo sapiens, maybe he was Titan, maybe he was Cherub, maybe I don't know. Maybe he was Romulan, or I don't know what he was. It doesn't really matter. In any case, the issue was making people care about the situation, not only aware of the situation, but that it will be in their priority to actually deal with the situation. That the information will arrive on the hands of people that actually care about the situation and want to change it. So we knew that it's possible to close the gate, terminate the gate, but he didn't have he thought that it's not his place to do it. And this is actually this. I arrived on the same conclusion independently, that I should not do it in any. It's not the correct method, because first of all they are there for a reason, and potentially they can be used for good purposes. And also, moreover, this is an international issue. It should be humans should deal with it. I mean, you cannot babysit humans. I mean, you cannot, like, I mean, because, I mean, they are the ones that should be in charge of the earth, not us, the cherubs. It was never the agenda, like, I mean, to control the earth. I mean, why would we want to actually do that? I mean, do you think that, I mean, we are like bored, that this are like our habit to be babysitters of disgusting monkeys? It doesn't make sense. They should handle the situation, but I mean, but how do you make them aware of the situation? So after a thought, he decided that what he should do is the following: not close the gates, not close any gate, but instead rewire the gates, because the gates, it takes a lot of energy to create a new one. As I said, you need like a power plant or I don't know what. But it doesn't take much to rewire the gates. It's mostly you just need to use the right commands, because once the gate is open, it is potentially possible to move from any gate to any other gate. It's like the neurons that you've seen under a microscope. Think of it, there are thousands of neurons or millions of ones, and they are both like floating in liquid. And potentially each one can transfer energy to each other one. So presumably, even though, I mean, it's not proven, presumably why shouldn't it be possible to actually move matter between each one to the other one, as long as the size is correct, because they vary tremendously in size. But I mean, if they are, I mean, similar in size, why shouldn't it be possible to move matter between those neurons, not only energy? And this is the same for the gates. And this does not require energy. This is like software change, not hardware change. It doesn't require more energy. It requires, I mean, the command, the symbolic command. Now we should be reminded that something incredibly important happened not long before these events, which is the Iranian Revolution. They stopped being very good friends of the Israelis, and they become dire enemies of the enemies until this day. And the circumstances of this, I spoke about it in the past. It's a huge issue in itself, and actually the public is not aware what's actually going on, because from like public perception point of view, it doesn't even make sense. They don't share border. They do now, but presumably they do not share border, and they don't even have like, I mean, kind of like immediate conflict, I mean, with regards to almost anything at all. And it's certain that, I mean, the whole issue with the Palestinians, like, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, just an excuse. Right? I mean, the Iranians, I mean, that's kind of like an excuse. Reality is, in reality, what actually happened is that, I mean, the Iranians felt like, during the 70s that the Israelis, I mean, they stabbed them in the back in a very cruel way, but they cannot speak about it because it was done in circumstances that are considered from the Iranian perspective as shameful for them. They cannot discuss it. And so that's why they hate the Israelis tremendously, not because like, I mean, presumably like religion, there are also, I mean, idiot people speak about like presumably kind of like a conflict, I don't know, like, I mean, like a war between Judaism and like Shia, and this is stupid and manifestly untrue, so untrue. And it doesn't make sense, and it's just not true. Reality is that this kind of like state of, I mean, the situation of the states are enemies are because the Iranians hate the Israelis, and this is because of things that the Israelis have done to them during the 70s, but they cannot discuss it because they consider it shameful. But they just hate them because of these things. And actually, after, I mean, you kind of like start to actually know the Israelis, I mean, you understand that, I mean, it's totally, I mean, within their, it's totally, I mean, inside like the boundaries of their culture to stab their friends in the back. Like, I mean, I can totally see, I mean, how it happens. Like, I mean, that they were good friends for many years, and the Israelis just, decided, hey, yeah, why not, I mean, betray them and stab them in the back in a very shameful way. And also to do it in a way that they cannot speak about it because, I mean, it's under shameful circumstances. I can totally see it happening because, after you are disillusioned of everything that you grew up, like, I mean, after you kind of see what people are, they really are, The people, I mean, I grew up in this place, but I mean, you know, after a long time, and you could start to see, like, you kind of like, I mean, you remove the scarf from like your eye and you see reality and you understand these people are, I mean, they are lizards. All of them are snakes and lizards. So definitely it's something that, I mean, could have happened and they have happened. This is the true reason for why they hate each other. But it's something that no one actually discussed in public, and all the other excuses doesn't make sense at all. Anyway, part of the revolution is that they stopped using the gates. And this is actually something that should be said, like, I mean, to their favor, like to the favor of the Iranians, because, as I said, the gates were always used in a cool way. Not always as cool, in a way that is cool as like the Israelis, because the Israelis are the masters of cruelty. And they always have been, and they still are. They are the worst of the worst. And so not everyone that used gates have done like in such a cool way. But certainly they were used during the time of the Shah, like the Iranian ruler that, I mean, before the revolution, and not in a good way. Perhaps not as cool as like the Israelis, because again, the Israelis are like, I mean, the experts of anything that is cool. But I mean, but not in a good way. And as I said, in the current situation of humanity, like, I mean, they shouldn't use the gates because they are all children, and I mean, not only the Israelis, all of them are children, and it's just they are not mature enough to use this kind of like instrument that is there. It's created by cultures that are superior to them tremendously, and probably should be used by cultures that are superior to them tremendously. So it was actually, I mean, a good decision not to use it anymore. But it was still there. Of course, under surveillance, like, you know, like a military base, you know, part of, like in Israel, part of a military base, but not used. So he rewired the gate to create a border between those two former friends and now enemies. And since then, there is actually, they share border, the Iranians and the Israelis. So the Dark Knights crossed the gate to Venus to escape from radiation and find themselves in Iran, which was very funny. Now, even though the gate was not used, there were still Venusians in Iran, up to this day. Female Venusians mostly. I don't know what happened to the males. I don't have like the history of the Iranians. It was difficult enough for me to understand what happened in Israel. It's certainly outside my capabilities to understand like the history of Iran. Like I don't know. I know just very basic stuff, but I don't know what they've done with the males, if they even take them, if they treated them cruelty like in Israel. I just don't know. Certainly, like in Israel, most of the people that crossed the gate were females, if only for the reason that most of them are females even like in the natural circumstances, but certainly after like all the years of the genocide, I mean, like the great majority were females. So there are still female Venusians like in Iran. And I don't know what's going on. I just don't know. I don't know what. I have no idea. I just know that they hated these Dark Knights. They really, really hated them. And it's not really difficult to understand why. So the Iranians interrogated these Dark Knights. They took the information that they needed from them, and then they literally created, like, chopped them to pieces. Like they created ground meat out of them. And some of the Venusians, the females, actually ate it, believe it or not, in order to gain, like, I mean, to be more powerful. And the Iranians didn't care because, I mean, whatever. I don't know if it's considered halal, like I mean, it's like kosher from the Islamic point of view. I don't know what's the religion stand on such things, but anyway, that's what happened. They chopped them to pieces, and the Venusians ate them. And then some of them become powerful because of this, because they had many neurons in their body. So they had the power of changing. Like, I mean, they always have the power of changing all of them always have this power. But the more they have the robots, the more powerful they are. And especially, I mean, from the point, like, I mean, the more they're able to actually change their form and to be doppelgangers. So a group changed their form to look like the Dark Knights, And after some time, they crossed the gates again. And they completely destroyed the Dimona site. And I don't know how many warheads existed, but after that, the number went, shrank to 0 immediately. They just destroyed the, they went like presumably back. I mean, no one suspected that there is something wrong because it was the usual procedure, like the radiation starts, the dark nights, they go to Venus, and after some time, they come back. This was usual, but what actually went back is a group of Venusians that destroyed the site completely. So the number of actual warheads during the time of the interview with presumably the person that is called Mordechai Vanunu was 0. Now the story doesn't end here, because actually many of the females following this story in Israel, they found a way out of Israel. Because another important thing that happened is that the Iranians now had proof, because they weren't like now it was something that, the cruelty of the Dark Knights, there was evidence from from the horse's mouth, as they say. From their own, like they admitted the things that they have done, and they weren't like loyal to the Israelis. You should understand, these were slaves, they were not like the real villains here. The villains are the Israelis. They were slaves that were kidnapped as babies and molested as children and became homosexuals and pedophiles. And yes, they've done a lot of cruelties, but in essence, they were the disgusting group of poor slaves, and they never got any compensation for their actions. They weren't like rich or something like that. They weren't like alien criminal masterminds that lived in Earth, like as a basis for their actions in Venus. It wasn't like that. They were the scum of the earth. They were treated as the scum of the earth, and they had no money, and they were at the same time they committed much cruelty, because that's life, and this is life in Israel. So it's not like that they were particularly loyal to the Israelis. So once they were in Iran, it wasn't very difficult to make them admit in everything they have done and to tell everything that they know. And they didn't know much besides, all the issues that, they were not part of, they weren't, higher ups in the Israeli intelligence. They were fascist instruments. But they knew a lot about their own actions. And this was enough, because their actions were very, very cool. So now, a state, it was like a state issue, not like, the issue of one person that, is powerless. So now there was actually a state in this earth that had strong evidence of all the cruelty that these people have done from their own mouths. And they had the power to actually proliferate the knowledge, in a way that was completely unavailable to this predecessor that was just a person, one without any connection and no power. So they had a way to proliferate the knowledge. And following these events, actually many of the film titans were released from Israel and went to other places in this world. So this is the kind of at the end of the saga, but again I would say it's not kind of like artificial end, because it never stops. There were many things that happened after that, and all new cruelties and new generation, and my own. And I was born in 1984, and so it's not like ותשקוט הארץ 40 שנה, as they say in the Book of Judges. Now everyone is live peacefully ever after, or even not for decades, because not long after that, there were many other important events that took place in Israel that relate to the intelligence communities, and many died from diseases actually that relates to the Venusian exploitation. But all of this is very interesting, and I spoke about it in the past, and I can speak about it again if it's really you find it very I don't know, pressing right now. But so I can do it try to speak about it sometimes in the near future, even though I spoke about it in the past. But it's just to say, it's not that there were a happy ending forever after, because there were always new events, and like I mean, not only in Israel, in general, but with regards to evolution exploitation. And then and after some time they discovered my existence and more cruelties up to this day. But in any case, this was the changes in the bicycle mechanism, and this allowed the termination of the Dark Knight institution, and the release of many of these females to other places. But at the same time, it tremendously assisted the rise to prominence of a new type of Titan females that are integral part of the Israeli intelligence, and they are used like as operators, and they grew up in Israel. They are about my age or younger than that, and they treat me in a very cruel way, like all my life. And they are in general, these are lizard women, the worst of the worst, disgusting creatures with cruelty without end. And also, on top of that, they have the bicycle mechanism they are now, they control the bicycle, and they use it for all sorts of ways, including to torment me. But as I said, this is a story for another time. So this will be, the conclusion of the saga, and I hope it was both entertaining and enlightening.